Mr. Chairman, good to see
Hi,
you.
guys.
Hey, Michael, good to see you as well.
Dr. Joe, thanks for joining us, buddy. We know you're busy, so we appreciate you helping us out.
No problem at all. Good to be here. I'm in a dressing room on off stage at the Brown Theater. We just finished admin kickoff for the district, so my surroundings are unique, but we're okay.
Love it. At least there's no palm tree, Joe, like last time.
I think I prefer the palm tree, actually.
Yeah, I bet.
That was a really good conference, by the way.
That's good. That's good. That always counts.
That always
To
counts.
you guys on behalf of K-Web. I'm going to make Tony and Dr. Ellison both co-hosts, so you all can share as necessary.
And Debbie, your volume is down a little bit, less than the others, just FYI. And Joe, if you just want to, I'll be watching as you're speaking. If you just want to signal and stuff,
Right.
you could say next slide, or you just give me a hand signal or something, and I'll flip for you.
I was just about to ask you that.
Sorry to miss the fun at the barn tonight, Joe. So you'll have to make sure Kristen takes good notes for me because Regina's on vacation too. So
Yeah, somebody will take notes. I don't know if they'll come out as copiously as yours do, but we'll figure it out.
Kristen's pretty good. We've been doing this a while together. I think it'll be all right.
I think so too. She's got another softball game to get to, I think, tonight. She's always running.
Yeah, she's on the circuit. Yep.
Yep.
Can you guys hear me any better? Awesome. Thanks, Michael. We'll get started shortly. I told Tony earlier, we are anticipating, I would say close to 60, 70, and that's who accepted. And a lot of people sometimes don't accept. So we might have upwards of 100 or so. Scott Pierce, glad we could give you a reprieve from the triple-digit heat down there.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm on the road today, so I'm in the car, parked in a parking lot. Kim would be happy to know I'm in an electric Toyota.
He sure would.
He would be very proud.
Yeah. Well, I have to admit, my family owns a Toyota dealership, so just a little plug there for
You get the
Toyota.
inside scoop.
We'll pay you later.
Well, yeah.
Stephanie, I don't know if you've met Dr. Ellison before. I know I hadn't, but Tony, if you wanted to do brief interjections just between K-Web and Dr. Ellison.
Sure. Dr. Joe Ellison is the assistant superintendent for JCPS under Marty. And Dr. Ellison, Stephanie's the executive director for the Kentucky Workforce Board. So she's at the state level for what Michael does here locally for Kentucky Works.
Awesome. Good to meet
Wonderful
you.
to meet you.
Nice
Thanks
to
for
be
joining
here.
us today.
Always.
All right, everybody. I think we are hitting 12 o'clock on the button, so we're going to go ahead and get started. For everyone who is joining us for the first time, this is the KWIB's monthly partner spotlight, in which we lift up our partners and best practices across the state to really utilize the platform of the KWIB to talk about what is happening out in your communities. And today we have the pleasure of hosting Mr. Tony Georges, as well as Dr. Ellison from JCPS. For those of you who don't know the famous Mr. Tony, he is a member of the KWIB as well as the chair for the Kentuckiana Works Board at this point in time. So Tony, without further ado, I will happily hand over the mic to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Stephanie. And I want to let you know a couple of things for those that I don't know personally. Much more of a conversationalist than a present to you. So we've got some slides here. We're going to take a team approach. I'm going to cover a little bit about what Kentuckiana Works is doing in this space. Dr. Ellison, who's the assistant superintendent for JCPS, is going to share with everyone some of the how it works and the structure. And then at the end, we'll show you some photos of what it actually kind of looks like. And I'm trying to find the share button here, and it's and by the way, Michael Gritton is joining us from Canada. So thank you
Nice.
for taking time out of your vacation.
Yeah, so glad you could join us, Michael.
Happy to do it, Stephanie.
Oh, here we go. All right, there we go. It was just a user error, as I figured. So, so what we'll do, we're thinking we've got about 30 minutes worth of content here-ish. And I know that Debbie is going to be kind of monitoring the chat. If it makes sense and somebody's got a question, please jump in. And otherwise, we'll just get going. Again, Chair Kentuckiana Works, have been on the board for about 5 years. Love the work we do. By day, I work at UPS and lead the HR function for our airline. So, and again, there's Dr. Ellison, Assistant Superintendent for High Schools. Michael's team kind of put this presentation together. So I thank Michael and Regina, if she happens to be out there, for doing this. But if you really, think about WIOA, the law does not say workforce boards should consider leading career pathways. It doesn't say they might. It doesn't say they're allowed to. It says they shall. And so that's one important thing. So we take that very seriously in Kentuckiana Works. And back in 2016, a lot of the employers that are on the board were frustrated, for lack of better terms. I understand that the high schools are full of children, young adults with names and goals, but pardon the analogy, but if you consider it as a supply and demand, the school system is producing what the workforce and the employers are consuming. And we had this realization that there was a disconnect. And so rather than sitting on the sidelines complaining, the employers through Kentuckiana Works, through GLI, decided, and with the partnership of JCPS, decided to say, hey, how can we get into this game and help you produce kids, graduates that have the skills, the requisite qualifications that we're looking for. And so that's kind of how we got into this. We've been doing it now for 6 years. 2016 is when we started the idea. 2017 is when we started the work. And so it's been 6 years now. So how we did it, or at least for the Kentuckiana Works board, is we set the strategy, right? So we look through market intelligence to decide, okay, if we're going to build these academies, we're going to build these in the schools, what jobs is it we're really trying to fill? What industries are in the most need? Which ones have the highest paying jobs? Which ones are open today, but are going to have more openings 5 years from now, 10 years from now? So we really established kind of the direction in terms of pathways, and provided the school district with that data. We worked with GLI to recruit business partners. You'll see what that looks like here in a minute. Well, for most of the rest of the presentation, you'll see that we originally started with 11. It got up over 100. Certainly COVID is a reality. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. That kind of changed things. And then Kentuckiana Works kind of manages something we call the guiding team, which it's really a community organization that it's schools administrators, it's academy coaches, it's business partners, it's nonprofits, it's the chamber, it's Kentuckiana Works, it's community members, it's whatever. It's a large group of people that are really helping set, again, the framework, the accountability, and they're a lot of the people doing the work. And so we'll talk a little bit about what the guiding team looks like as well. And then some of you might be saying, well, how in the world do you manage all this work? We were fortunate to get a couple grants from James Graham Brown Foundation and the JP Morgan Chase that funds a person on Kentucky Network staff that really, they wake up every day and do nothing but Academies of Louisville. So that's a beautiful thing. But because we shall enforce career pathways, we've also built into our local plan that we believe the high school career pathways are, in fact, WIOA work. So if we ever need to get into spending more money, we definitely have got the structure to do so. But so that's a little bit about how we pay for it. But what I really want to do is I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ellison, and I think he's going to walk you through a few slides that really talk about what is the Academy program, who are the pieces, how does it work, kind of nuts and bolts. And again, then we'll come back towards the end and we'll show you some photos of what it looks like in action. So Dr. Ellison, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Tony, for that handoff and for framing things. And thank you to everybody for being here. I am Joe Ellison. I serve as the Assistant Superintendent of High Schools in JCPS. In this role, I directly support and oversee our 27 high schools, where we have a very clear mission of ensuring that all of our students graduate either college and or career ready, and also with an actionable plan to engage in a productive life in our society. And so we work hard to make sure our kiddos graduate with a diploma plus something else, industry certification, college credit, whatever it may be, so that they can move forward with a plan after high school. So a little bit about JCPS. Tony, you can switch. Just to give you some context on us, we are the 29th largest school district in the United States. We're the largest school district in Kentucky. We actually school about 1/7 of all of the students in Kentucky. So that is somewhere around 98,000 students. It fluctuates year to year. A very diverse school population. So you see 125 different languages spoken. We're also a majority minority school district, which means now the majority of our students designate themselves as something other than white. So Black, Hispanic, Asian, Pacific Islander, 2 or more races, but majority of our students, somewhere upward of 60%, are classified as minority. Also, 81% of the school-age children in Jefferson County attend Jefferson County Public Schools. So while we have a plethora of private and parochial schools, we do school the majority of school-age children in our county. 63% of our students qualify for what's called free and reduced lunch. That's an educational proxy for living at or below the poverty line. So not only are we majority minority, but we're also majority free and reduced lunch, which means with our students come a great deal of needs and also disparate needs that we have to work to support to ensure that our students graduate prepared. And then 169 schools, and of those 169 schools, 27 live in the high school area. 15 of those are what we call Academy of Louisville schools. 12 of those live outside of that designation. We have 3 magnet schools, 1 reside school, 2 traditional schools, 2 behavioral alternative schools, and 4 choice schools. For the lion's share of our conversation today, we're going to focus in on those 15 Academy of Louisville schools, but I think it's important to understand the scope and the breadth of the type of schools that we have in our high school zone to ensure that we're serving all of our students well. Next slide, Tony. Thank you. So the Academies of Louisville, we are in our 6th year of implementation. Academies of Louisville, also affectionately called A of L, was first conceived in the 2017-18 school year. 11 schools came on board at that point. In 18-19, 3 more came on board, and then in 19-20, an additional school came on board to give us those 15. We're actually in talks with 1 more school. I'm not going to give a whole lot of detail, but we are in talks with 1 more school about shifting over to start next year. So next year we would be at 16. Out of those 15 Academy of Louisville schools, we serve approximately 18,000 of our high school students in 55 academies. And so when you think about that scope, we're managing 55 academies that typically house 2 to 3 individual career technical education pathways in order to support our students' interests and needs. 130 plus unique companies currently are active as business partners, supporting 59 unique career pathways. So there is some overlap in those career pathways being located in multiple places across our district. So 59 career pathways, but 130 business partners on. Because we started this initiative in 2017-18, the class of 2021 was our first class to go through 4 years of the Career Academy model. Mind you, About a third of the 1920 school year was spent in remote learning, also known as non-traditional instruction or NTI because of COVID. And then 2021 was pretty much all that way except for the tail end of the school year. So those students who came out, class of 21, also had some interruption in that Career Academies model the way we had initially conceived it. And then we have three main drivers of the work. Obviously, Jefferson County Public Schools, Kentuckiana Works, which Michael Gritton leads, and Tony Georges serves as the chair, and then also Greater Louisville Inc. Is a significant partner driving the work for us too. So the first question we often get is, what is this thing called the Career Academies model, right? And what is its purpose? Our real goal is to increase student engagement and the relevance of their work. I can't tell you how many times I talk to people who went through the factory model of high school and they talk about the things that they never used that they had to learn. I ended up being an English major, an English teacher, a school administrator, and now a district administrator, and I took calculus. I don't use calculus, but I had to take it. It was a part of what I had to take in high school. So there wasn't a great deal of relevance to me. I struggled in math. I didn't really live for math, but I had to take it. And so really what we're trying to do is help students see immediate applicability of what they're learning in school, not just of the content, but of the skills. So it's really gauged to try to increase that sense of engagement, but also relevance. And so we have these career-themed, smaller learning communities. We take a larger school and break it into these smaller academies, 3 to 4 academies, depending on the size of the school, that provide students a sense of connection and immediate engagement that help to really provide that real-world learning in the classroom. What you see on the left side is where all of that starts, which is in our freshman academy. High schools in our district run grades 9 through 12. And so we believe we have to have a strong transition from middle school into high school and a strong induction into that career academy model. That happens in the freshman academy where there are teams of teachers who own groups of students who follow them academically or working to support them academically and socially and provide the wraparound supports needed. From there, those students transition into our upper class academies where they really engage deeply in a career technical education pathway that's embedded in that academy and still have those wraparound supports and that sense of ownership and connection in those upper academies. So it starts in that freshman academy, but our career academy work and career technical education pathway work really lives and dies on the participation of our business partners. We have to have strong engagement with those partners to support learning. So part of that is an iterative conversation with them about things that are happening in the workforce that need to show up in our classroom instruction, but then also their ability to provide experiences to our students that give them a sense of what that workforce experience really is like. Interdisciplinary connections are critical. So back to that sense of building relevance in instruction, we want students to see how what they are learning in the classroom is immediately applicable to what happens in the workforce. One example I always give is a sophomore sitting in a geometry class, then walking into a machine tool die lab and being able to readily apply those geometry principles to that hand-on work in that lab. So those interdisciplinary connections are critical. I've already mentioned the upper class academies. Those are those 10th through 12th grade career academies. And then there has to be investment, right? Like these things don't happen without adequate funding. And so that's us on the district side. That's also our friends at Kentuckiana Works and GLI supporting our business partner work, but then also the district putting money where our mouth is on renovating our buildings and making sure we're creating 21st century learning spaces with the appropriate equipment and resources that students need. Finally, it's about leadership. So there's a sense of leadership that has to exist at the district level, but the leadership at the school level is even more critical. And so we have an executive principal that oversees the entire building, and then we have an assistant principal called an academy principal, and a counselor called an academy counselor that are assigned to each of those upper class academies and the freshman academy to ensure that the work of the career academy model is happening as it should. Next slide, Tony. So what you see here is an infographic that kind of maps out what this looks like. And so when you look at a school, you have that executive principal we have an academy coach as well for each of our Academy of Louisville schools. And that academy coach's focus is twofold. One, it's the depth of the implementation of the Career Academies model, but the second piece is that continual connection to our business partners. Again, the Career Academy model cannot be successful without effective and impactful relationships with those business partners, and that academy coach, part of their living and breathing daily work is making sure that we have good relationships with those partners. We go into the Freshman Academy where there's a designated and dedicated academy principal and counselor, and from there we go into career pathways in those career academies. So depending on the size of the school, you could have 2 or 3. And one thing I also want to note is that electives are always present in our Academy of Louisville schools. There's a misnomer sometimes that because things are really driven through the lens of our career technical education pathways and career academies, that there's not space for band, choir, orchestra, visual arts, drama, world language, and that's not true. We still want our students to have that well-rounded educational experience, and so those things are still present. And at the top of this infographic, you see those strong business and community partnerships, which are necessary to ensure that the work is thriving.
Hey, Dr. Ellison, we've got a question in the chat. I think it's a great one, but they're asking, is there a position in JCPS that's the primary liaison between the schools and the business, or managing the business partners?
That is a great question. And actually, yes, we just added that individual. Mary Beth Smith is our newly appointed Director of Career Academies. When I came into this role as the Assistant Superintendent of High Schools in July of what was last year, 21? July of 21, I quickly observed that we did not have enough capacity on our team to drive the work the way we needed to. And so I immediately began to lobby to add that position. And so Mary Beth Smith has come on. She was a previous academy principal and academy counselor at one of our schools, Jeffersontown High School. So she knows the work intimately from the school side. And her job is to support the academy coaches in the implementation of the model, to support our academy coaches in their liaison relationship with our business partners, and to also oversee the fidelity of our work across the district with this Career Academy model. So we do have an individual on our team now, as well as Kristen Wingfeld, who is our specialist for business and community partnerships. She does a great deal of individual work in support with all of our business and community partners. And then also we have Kim Morales, who's an executive administrator of high schools. She directly supports all of our Academy of Louisville schools, and her job is really leadership support with our principals to ensure that this model is implemented with fidelity. So we have a 3-person team, 3 phenomenal ladies who do an incredible job of making sure this work happens the way it should.
Hey, Dr. Ellison, can I add one other thing? Michael Britton from Kentuckiana Works. Part of Kim Minke's question, I think, is about the role of that academy coach. And Kim, part of the investment JCPS made when they went to this model is at each of these high schools, that academy coach, a big part of their job is to be the liaison with the businesses that are partnering with that school, which whether they have 2 academies or 3. So not only is there district level support that Dr. Ellison was describing, but there's also an individual at each of those schools and a big chunk of their job is to be the relationship manager with those employers, because we've learned the hard way, if that isn't somebody's job, that always falls by the wayside. Thanks, Joe.
Yep, thanks, Michael. All right, so this slide is a snapshot of data, and I know there's a bunch of different colors on it, so let me try to kind of operationalize this slide for you. So this shows a 4-year trend of what the state, KDE, Kentucky Department of Education, calls post-secondary readiness measures. So this is a chart of our 15 Academy of Louisville schools. Post-secondary readiness is a metric that we monitor at the high school level in every school district because based on KDE's measure, it tells us the number or percentage of students that are graduating from us prepared for either college or career. And so that means they've earned an industry certification, they've earned a passing grade in 3 hours of a dual credit course, they've earned a passing score on an AP exam, they've attained ACT benchmarks, which traditionally and historically had been a gatekeeper exam for students, but really no longer is. A lot of schools shifted away, colleges shifted away from that during the pandemic, but nonetheless, that's a measure that we monitor. And so what you see in that 18-19 measure is literally year 2 of our Academies of Louisville work. And then what you see in that goldenrod space is year 5, last year's data for Academies of Louisville work. You'll see some ebb and flow in between. That's a COVID impact, to be quite frank with you, especially that 2021 year when we couldn't give a lot of our industry certification exams because we weren't in person. But you'll see that coming out of COVID into last year, we had a significant rebound, and we attribute a lot of that to the depth of the implementation of the Career Academy work. So this slide really is just some quantitative data to show that this approach works for students that were typically in our resides or more neighborhood type high schools, to make sure they are ready and have a plan to transition with their diploma from graduation. Tony, next slide, please. So when we talk about these Academy business partners, it's important to think about what is a partner and what is it that we really ask from them as far as commitment is concerned. So in Jefferson County, we ask for a 1-year commitment. We ask our business partners to work with schools for at least 1 year, and what we found is once they get in and work for a year, they typically hang around. So we ask for that commitment for 1 year. We ask for that business partner to assign a primary contact who will then work with that school's academy coach and be that individual that academy coach can work with to ensure that instruction is informed, but we're also creating those impactful, engaging experiences for students. We ask those partners to engage in planning sessions with the school to really determine how to best work together, and then also produce an action plan. Each of our Academies of Louisville schools has an Academy's implementation plan, and their work with their business partners folds into that plan as well. We ask those business partners to participate in our advisory councils. So we have an Academy Advisory Council. We also have advisory councils or advisory boards for our career technical education pathways. And so we ask our partners to join into that work in order to inform the practice at the school. And then we ask them to engage in work-based activities, to give our schools and our students at least 2 work-based activities each year that, again, provides that sense of relevance and engagement for our students. And then lastly, in conjunction with Kentuckiana Works, we have a platform for work-based learning, which is experiential learning for our students. That platform is called Kentuckiana Earns, and we ask those partners to post those opportunities on that digital platform so that students have access to things outside of just what they may have access in school, which then could turn into long-term employment for our students. Last slide I have is really about a visual of how business partners can directly support schools. And so we lift this from the Ford Next Generation Learning work, but it really overlays with Career Academy works real well. Because sometimes business partners think they have to go to the nth degree on that partnership work, and what we try to show is that there's a continuum of that support. So part of it is the awareness and exploration of the career, and that can look a few different ways. It could be classroom speakers, it could be curriculum review, it could be roundtable discussions, but it's about giving the exposure and awareness and exploration to the field. Kind of the middle of that continuum is the career prep, where we're doing some learning with the company. So that could be job shadows or reverse job shadows. They could be work site tours and field trips. That would be some moderate intensity as far as the commitment from the business partner. And then on the high intensity end of that continuum is that real career application, where students progress through their career technical ed pathways, and they have a capstone experience with a particular partner in a particular role. There's an internship or even apprenticeship, and I saw a comment in the chat about apprenticeships, and this aligning directly to that because it does. And so that's that real application of what students are learning within their career academy lives and in those career technical education pathways, and the application to something real time, real world while they are in high school to deepen the relevance and engagement of what they're learning there. I'm going to kick it back to Tony. He's going to talk a little more deeply, I think, about that Academy business partner work.
Thank you, Dr. Ellison. And there was a chat before I go. Do we have the data on what percentage of students have an actual hands-on experience in business?
We don't, but we have developed a way to capture that. So we will be tracking both those career prep and career application opportunities in our database at the school, at the district level, called Infinite Campus. So we will be tracking starting this year We had to have a whole tab built for that. How many students go on a field trip? How many students are in a work-based learning opportunity? How many students are engaged deeply in an internship or apprenticeship, and so on? So starting this year, we will have that data. We don't have good data on that right now.
Gotcha. And I appreciate that. And one additional thing is once the kids come out of the freshman academy where they explore all the different academies in their school and they select for their sophomore year, 100% of the kids in the school are in an academy. So they have their freshman year to explore which one they want, and then they kind of commit for their sophomore through senior year. So they're all in it, but that's a good question. I see a couple questions are coming in now, which is awesome. Is the program connected at all with post-secondary, JCTC, 4-year dual credit, that kind of stuff?
Yes, we actually have dual credit available in each of our career technical education pathways aside from just core content opportunities. That was a big push of mine coming into this role to make sure that our students who were like me, who may not have had the aptitude in high school for core content dual credit, still had the opportunity to experience through career tech ed. So there is a direct connection to JCTC for that, and also some other post-secondary institutions to provide those dual credit opportunities.
Perfect. And I got one more question, and then Brenda Hagan, I'm going to come to you. But the question is, how difficult, easy is it for students to change programs if the fit's not right? And one of the things we've learned is it's potentially more valuable to teach a kid what they might think they want to do that they learn that they really don't. So we have kids swapping in the middle of school. We have kids swapping schools because the academy that they want is not in the school that they're currently going to. So I can't tell you the X's and O's of how that happens, but I can tell you they all have flexibility to change. So we want them in one that their passion is there, because that's what really drives the connection. That's what drives the relevance, and that's what drives the motivation. So Dr. Ellison, anything you would add to that?
Yeah, I think that's a spot on answer, Tony. And I would say there's a reason why we have 59 career academies, right? And there's that duplication. So our high schools are zoned in 3 different networks across the district. And so we have all of those career tech ed pathways in each network, so that if I would normally go to Doss High School, but I really want a health sciences experience that may be more rigorous right now, I can apply to go to Valley. And so I have the opportunity to apply to go there. Now, once a student is in an academy, we typically ask them to stay. And that's why that exploration is really important in the freshman year to make an informed decision. But there are times we get into the sophomore year and Joe goes, this is absolutely not it for me, and I can't do it. Typically in the sophomore year going into the junior year, we can make a change, but that's going to require students to double up on some classes in the pathway to make sure that they have completed at least 3 classes to be eligible to sit for the industry certification. Because again, our goal is not just the exposure, but it's to make sure students exit with a diploma and the credential in the pathway. And there are state regulations on that. They have to be at least in that 3rd course. So then we have to do 1 course in the junior year and double up in the senior year to make sure they can sit for that exam. So it gets a little tricky, but typically we can manage a change at the end of the sophomore year.
Got it. Perfect. Okay, Brenda, did you want to just ask your question?
Yes, thanks, Tony. And Dr. Ellison, I love that you're sharing this information. I work at the governor's office, and we've built an apprenticeship portfolio for early childhood professionals. It starts with the youth apprenticeship that's offered through that early childhood pathway system. And like what you were describing in 2020, there was a huge issue with getting students in the programs because child care and early care and education programs were either closed or couldn't receive people that were not employees in their program. So we're in the process of rebuilding that program or refreshing it. And it feels like there's an opportunity here to say, hey, you're doing some of the same work that we're doing. And I feel like I would just wonder if you would be open to something like that. We feel like the program would be stronger, not just coming from the GOEC, but also coming from KDE. And we've spoken with Dr. Williams about this. I think that from what you're saying here with all the different pathways that you're offering, there might be a really great opportunity because as we know, childcare providers, we're in dire need of professionals in this field, and building the workforce for the future is a wonderful way to set up for future success. In 2021, the youth apprenticeship program registered 35% of the apprenticeships in the Office of Apprenticeship. So there is a need. And that was in the middle of a pandemic when we couldn't even send them out. So I feel like by addressing that need, we should be partnering in some way.
Totally open to the conversation, Ms. Hagan. So let's connect and let's try to figure out how we can make that linkage work.
Sounds good. And I think Dr. Kish Price is on the line. I might have a comment or question. Go ahead, Dr. Price.
Thank you. Yes. First of all, thank you so much for this presentation. And I am a fan of the Academies of Louisville program and have sons participating. I just had a quick question around the ability to expand this beyond the high schools and if it could be a potential solution for the teacher shortage, and wondering if we could expand more there. So that's my question.
So, Dr. Price, good to see you again. Haven't seen you yet this year, so good to see you. There is an initiative that has just taken root this year in our middle school level called Middle School Explore, which is designed to give students some exploration in the industry sector areas that from which our career tech ed pathways and career academies are derived. So we're working hard to make sure our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students come to us with some previous exposure and maybe even some idea of what school, what career academy, what career tech ed pathway they want to enter. Regarding the teacher workforce challenge that everybody is facing, one of our more popular and growing pathways right now is our teaching and learning pathway. We have a teaching and learning pathway located at each of our high school networks. It continues to grow and expand, and that is one way for us to really work to counteract it. We know obviously there's some lag time in that because we've got to get kiddos out of high school and then into college and out. But with some flexibility that has come with KDE and EPSB, we know that we can probably grab those kiddos back in that senior year as a part of student teaching to be able to help to stymie some of the workforce challenges. In addition, and this is the last thing I'll say here, JCPS HR actually provided a signed commitment to each of our graduates from the teaching and learning pathway last year to say, if you work through your teacher prep program and you want to come back to JCPS, the door is wide open, you have a job guaranteed. So we are making those commitments to our seniors who graduate from our teaching and learning pathway as a way also to address that workforce challenge.
Awesome. So we've told a little bit about why the academies and a little bit about how the academies. Now we want to show you a little bit about what it looks like. And so this first slide here, once it goes, there we go. That's the picture on the left is not in a hospital. The picture on the left is in a high school classroom. It's one of our health sciences academies. Health sciences has academies in 6 high schools of the 15. And so this is where kids that want to choose a path in healthcare are using hospital equipment. They're actually giving IVs if anyone wants to volunteer. They're doing all kinds of stuff that's actually in the classroom. And you can see there's somebody from Norton Healthcare who's part of the instruction. The picture on the right is an IT academy that is at a workplace at Humana, where Dr. Ellison mentioned relevance many, many times. This is where the kids are learning. Now let me go see what it looks like in the business and the workplace. And so there's 2 examples of what academy work looks like. This one I'm a little particular to, I got to be honest, but that is not at UPS. And if you know UPS, you know that UPS is brown, not blue and yellow. But who is blue and yellow is Valley High School down in Dixie Highway. And so that is in a classroom in Valley High School. Next to it is a classroom that has all the components. And then next to that is a classroom that's got electrical panels. It's got a framed house where kids who are going down this pathway are hanging, learning to hang ceiling fans and install dryers and stoves and electrical outlets. And they progress over to this with the idea of coming out of high school with the CTE degrees, the certifications and the experience to where either UPS or any of the other hundreds of warehousing and distribution facilities around town that have this kind of equipment can put these folks to work maintaining and installing that equipment. So that's an example that's in the classroom. These kids get really excited about coming to see that. GE Appliances said, hey, that's great, UPS. I'm going to call that bet and raise you one. So at DOS, that is a an automation engineering line. It's exactly the same kind of equipment that they use at GE Appliances. These kids are learning how to not only work on the equipment, but to utilize it for advanced manufacturing. Again, it gets kids excited. You see the GEA 2-Day, that's something where GE was struggling with employees showing up on Fridays and Mondays. So they got an agreement where the kids are in school Tuesday through Thursday learning this equipment, and some of them are working at GE applying that knowledge on Mondays and Fridays. And so pretty exciting stuff. So this is more than just a business saying, hey, we want to help. It's really integrating with the school system. And then the last one is Class Act Federal Credit Union. These are operating credit unions that anyone can go to. And when you walk in the door to deposit your money or withdraw money or whatever, the kids work in the front desk, and all the way up are actual students that are in an academy supporting finance business. And so these are fully operating. We could show you lots and lots and lots and lots of pictures, but what we're trying to demonstrate is that when the business community gets involved with the education system in a way that gets the kids excited and makes what they're learning relevant, and even more important than relevant, usable when they graduate, because again, we're aligning these academies up to the in-demand sectors. It works, or at least it was working. True story. This stuff doesn't work if the kids aren't in the schools. So NTI was a trouble. We've got plans in place to address that. But anyway, so that's kind of what it looks like. And it's not just big employers, there are small employers. Like I said, that framed house out at Valley, the local hardware store donated some 2x4s. The local trade union came in and started teaching some of the kids about, framing and electrical. And it really truly is a team sport. The last slide that I'll give is here is just, it takes a lot of organization. And so we've got an Academies of Louisville guiding team that is a community at large kind of thing. Again, with all the different parties, you've got nonprofits, you got business, you got administrators, you got academy coaches, you've got interested, citizens. And we meet 5 times a year. Kentucky Works manages that process. And it's really where we try to keep the community and stakeholders informed about what's going on in Academies of Louisville. There is a smaller group. You can't make decisions in groups of 150. So there's a smaller executive committee that meets. There's actually a meeting tonight. But again, what we're trying to do as a guiding team is get people involved, strategic oversight. We're trying to build that deep community-wide ownership, because this isn't Dr. Ellison's schools. These are our schools, all of our schools. And these are our kids going to these schools. And these are our kids that are going to be employed by these employers. So we're really trying to make it community-wide. And we're trying to get ambassadors. The people that get involved in this work through the guiding team typically have a positive impact, or at least a positive outlook on what we're trying to do in these schools and the differences we're going to make. So that's kind of a lot, but I think if I look, we've got at least 20 plus minutes. I appreciate the questions coming along the way, but what we want to do now is kind of open it up. And again, we will talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. We stubbed our toe along the way a few times. We made some mistakes. We regrouped. We changed direction. And again, COVID unfortunately slowed our progress, but we are determined to pick right back up where we left off. So I see a question in the chat. Let me get to it. Okay. This is basic talent pipeline management, employers taking the reins of the emerging workforce to create the workforce they need. What sort of essential soft skills are we teaching? Wow, that's a great question. I know some of our surrounding counties, and this is coming to you, Dr. Ellison, but I know some of the surrounding counties have something called Profile of a Graduate, where they talk about, creativity, agility, and, global mindedness, that kind of stuff. And I know that there is not a statewide, but yes, we have built some of that in to the Academies of Louisville. So Dr. Ellison, you want to talk about what that is on the soft skill side?
Yeah, totally. So we look at it in a very similar way. We do have a profile of a graduate as a district, but we actually call it our backpack of success skills. So students in grades 5, 8, and 12 actually have to engage in a defense where they have selected artifacts from their learning and they argue or articulate, defend how those artifacts demonstrate their growth in certain softer skill areas. So being an effective communicator, being an emerging innovator, being a prepared and resilient learner, being a globally and competent, culturally competent citizen, and then being a productive collaborator. Those are the five wings of that. In addition, we understand that we are working to prepare students to walk into a workforce at some point. Some will go earn an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and then go to work. Some will go to trade school and go to work. Some will go to military and then go to work. And some will come right out of high school and go to work. So we recognize that there are certain skill sets that have to be built. And so we embed in our career technical education some of those soft skills, right? About collaboration, about showing up on time, arriving on time. Frankly, we have conversations with kids about being able to pass a drug screen because that's important as well. I mean, we live in 2022, so we have to have those conversations with our students. But we have conversations about those types of things because our business partners have been real clear. If you can give me a kiddo who can work well and can learn and can adapt, I can teach them what they need to know to do the job. So we're not solely focused on trying to teach the work of the job. We are trying to give them skills that will give them a leg up on other people coming in, but we also are working to teach that. Last thing I'll say there, Tony, is that there's been kind of some growing popularity across the state about a work ethic seal or a work ethic certificate. And that's something we're exploring in JCPS in partnership with the Backpack of Success Skills Defense, that if students can demonstrate through their career technical education work that they have hit these certain marks, they would actually end up with a seal on their diploma that would also additionally indicate having those particular soft skills under belt.
Awesome. And there's another question in here about parent engagement. And again, I'm going to kick that one to you as well, Dr. Ellison, but I will tell a kind of a funny story. Back in 2017, it was May, that UPS and Valley reached agreement on what we were going to do over there. And over the course of the summer, prior to the first day of school, we got that conveyor system installed. One of the engineers that volunteered his time to work on it had a son that was an incoming freshman who was scheduled to go to another school, who went through the process to pull his son out of that school and get him enrolled in Valley so that he could go through that. So that's one example. Ideally, if parents know what these academies do in terms of opportunities and preparedness, they're very supportive. We have a long way to go still with, I think, communication and marketing probably so that some of the parents know what this is. But that's one example that was a good story on parent engagement. But Dr. Ellison, what would you say about how engaged the parents are with the academy program?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say that parent engagement, comes in ebbs and flows depending on what school we're talking about, and that's with anything. We have some schools that have lights out numbers for parent-teacher conferences, and those are also the parents that are deeply engaged in conversations around career technical education and our career academies, and then we have some that aren't. So it's going to vary by student and by school. What I will say to your point, Tony, you mentioned earlier that these are not my schools, these are not Marty Polio schools, these are our schools. And so one of the things that we're working hard to brand and to push across our community is the impact that this work has and the benefit it has for our students. So we are working very closely with our district communications office. We have an Academies of Louisville Twitter handle. We have a Facebook page. We're pushing things out constantly. As we meet with parents in various settings, open house, parent-teacher conferences, whatever, we are making sure that they have information and materials that explain the Career Academy's work, what offerings are present in that school, and also why that experience is important. One of the things that we work hard to dispel, a misnomer we try to dispel, is that we're just trying to produce kids for the workforce. I mean, in a lot of ways we are, but we're also, again, trying to build skill set and some aptitude in our students. And so we have conversations with our parents who come to us with that misnomer about the skills students are building and how that is impactful for whatever their path may be. Trade school, college, community college, workforce, whatever, and how those skills are skills that parents would want their kids to have upon graduation, and how this approach helps to build those skills more deeply for their kids. So we have constant conversations. We're drumming up communication. Like Tony said, COVID was a bear for everybody. It was a bear for us with this work too, but we're rebounding pretty hard to make sure that message is out pretty clearly.
Awesome. And this warms my heart Someone in the chat is asking for contact information if they would like to get involved with partnership and collaboration. So I could certainly give Kristen's cell phone number here, but I'll leave it up to you, Dr. Ellison. How would you recommend someone reach out to explore potential opportunities to get involved?
So Kristen Wingfield is our most appropriate and poignant point of connection. I'm going to drop her email in the chat. You can grab that from there. Let her know that you were in this session and you want to have conversations, and she will definitely connect with you and go from there.
That's awesome.
And I appreciate you wanting to engage. We're happy to have you.
So Debbie, I can't see if there are any more hands up. I will make just a comment that again, we've got time if there are more questions, but one of the things that I'll just tell you a quick story, and it kind of summarizes why I think the business community, GLI, Kentuckiana Works, are surrounding JCPS on this. When we made that announcement, there was a big event. We signed a contract and an agreement with Valley High School kids and said, hey, we're going to do this. And at that time, nobody really knew what it was we were going to do to the scope with that conveyor system. But afterwards, there was a young man, and I swear I wish I could remember his name. He came up to me and said, hey, sir, this is really cool. I really appreciate you doing this, but can I ask you a question? I said, sure. And he said, UPS is a big company. You guys could have done this anywhere. Why in the world would you pick Valley High School? And I don't really honestly remember what I answered. It was probably something about conveyors or something, but in hindsight, man, that question bothered me. And in hindsight, the question that young man asked actually is the answer to his question. It demonstrated that in that school, they did not have good results. It's in a rather poor part of town. There's a lot of community issues there. And I don't know that this young individual thought that he was worth the investment that we were going to make in that academy. And again, that is part of the problem. And so it didn't land on me at the time, but in hindsight, I'm super glad we did that, because what happens is this kind of work, to Dr. Ellison's point, it's not just about employers. It's not just about workforce. You get these kids coming out of these programs making good wages, good money. It changes family trees. It changes security. It changes optimism. It changes a lot of things. I'm not going to get real, emotional and dramatic about it, but there's a lot at stake. And we truly believe if we can support this program and this theory, total community based, that it will improve the entire community. It'll improve these kids for sure, but the entire community stands to gain. So it's a pretty big deal, and it's pretty easy to get behind. So.
And Tony, I'll just jump in and say I will get real emotional about it, because this is my 22nd year in education, and this is why I'm in it, right? To change life trajectories for our students. And so, it is about the kid. We do all of this work, all of this investment, all of this partnership, all of the modifications to buildings and the spending of the money for resources and equipment to make sure kids have a valuable experience that gets them across the line with a plan. One of our tag phrases in my office on the high school team is that we exist to ensure relevant, engaging instruction that helps students build a life. Like, our goal is that our students build a life, but it's based upon what we have done to effectively support them across high school, and to make sure, I tell parents all the time, the most important day is not graduation day. It's the day after graduation. Graduation day is a great day. We celebrate and we have fun. But what matters is when kids' feet hit the floor the morning, the day after graduation, do they have a viable, actionable life plan that they can step out and execute? And so that's why we're in the work. That's why we sweat so hard around this Career Academies work and even the career technical education work in our other high schools, because we truly believe that we're here to make sure kids are building a path in order to build a life.
That's awesome. I appreciate that, Dr. Ellison. And I apologize for the arbitrary scrolling there of slides. Michael, I know you're still out there from a workforce board. Anything else you would, or from a workforce team, anything else you want to share with the group while we've got
them? I wanted to point out a couple of things to the KWIB members in particular, but to partners all around the state. We wanted to highlight this as a best practice, in part because I don't hear that much about other workforce boards around the country getting this deeply committed and embedded with their K through 12 system and aligning it with the community college and the needs of employers. Obviously, everyone is trying it, so we hope that you enjoyed it. Jefferson Community and Technical College is now awarding more dual credit than any other institution in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. That's no accident. That's an outcome of this dedicated work. Part of what is really cool about this, Dr. Ellison and Tony are both going to be going to a meeting tonight that will not end until 7:45 in the evening that's about this work. So part of what is beautiful to me as the workforce board director is to see how much Tony uses the pronoun we and how much Joe feels connected to the business community so that we're doing this work together, and the workforce board is part of the glue that's making that happen. That's why we wanted to lift it up for people. I would also say what's amazing is when we started this journey 6 years ago, we had gone down to see what the academy's work looked like in Nashville, because Nashville was being lifted up as a national model for this kind of work. I think if it wasn't for COVID, we would already be where Nashville is or better. And I think all three of us are committed that by the end of this school year, the performance, we're going to be knocking at those charts that Dr. Ellison showed with the bar graphs moving up. We're going to be producing performance across our high schools. It's going to be so impressive that people around the country are going to want to come and study it. So it's not the normal work that WIBs do necessarily, right? Because we know people think about career centers and all the other things that WIOA challenges us to do, but we wanted to lift it up for you to see this is what it looks like when a board is pulling together the right people and stimulating the right kind of activity, and then fundraising where we need to try to support the work to make sure that it happens.
Michael, do you know if any other school districts or regions have consulted with your teams at all about this? Has there been any discussion outside of Jefferson County about interest in these programs?
I mean, we have a 7-county board, Stephanie. So I know, the folks in Bullitt and Shelby and Oldham and that sort of thing are aware of what we're doing in the academies. Dr. Ellison was a principal in the Shelby County system for a while. So we have lots of permeability between those kinds of systems. I'm not sure as many other, and across the river, remember, we're a bi-state region in the DOL's eyes with our friends in Southern Indiana. There's an academy, the Clark County schools have academies as well. And again, the same sectors that we're focused on are the same sectors across the river. I don't think we've heard as much from people out in the state, but again, Dr. Ellison or his team may be hearing more from people about that than I am, because I know Nelson County's reached out to me. Other communities are trying to figure this out, Stephanie, which is why we wanted to lift it up, because it's not something you can only do in a big city like Louisville. This kind of alignment, one of the notes I think from Joe Paul was about talent pipeline management, and that is what this looks like, really, right?
To chime in on that, Michael, I will say that Fayette County, Lexington, has some semblance of an academy structure, Academies of Lexington or something like that. I don't know a great deal about it, but I know they have some type of structure. And typically your smaller districts in more suburban or rural areas probably won't have a career academy structure, because their career technical education work is typically at an area technology center, an ATC, and it's typically grounded there. And even in some entities, students from other surrounding districts may come there. So Michael mentioned I was principal in Shelby County. I was at Martha Lane Collins High School for 3.5 years. I was actually principal to Tony's kid for a minute. So that's an odd connection there. But we had an ATC, and students from Eminence, which is in Henry County, just north of Shelby, would come to Shelby County's ATC for courses. So a lot of times your career tech ed is in an area technical center, technology center, which makes it difficult then to implement a career academies model in a school, because you don't have the lion's share of your CTE pathways in the school. And so we talk a lot about the fact that you can have career technical education without academies, but you can't have academies without career technical education. So you have to have those pathways as the backbone and the lifeblood of that career academies model to make it work. So you may not see or hear of it in smaller districts for that particular reason.
Thank you. I
Stephanie?
appreciate that.
Stephanie?
Yes, Scott.
Just want to remind, a great presentation. I love the collaborative effort that you have with UPS. In rural Kentucky, in Russell County, I serve on the industrial authority. We, as an industrial authority, will break ground in September on a $5 million seed academy that will represent about 6 adjacent counties in rural Kentucky. So the academy structure is alive in the Commonwealth. Maybe not as robust as it is in Louisville because you have a greater need. You have a greater population that needs it. But it is alive in rural Kentucky, and we're putting up. The school system is not providing the money for this. Our industrial authority is putting over $5 million into this new school.
That's great, Scott. Thank you.
Yeah, and just one last comment I would make, Stephanie, and then I'll kick it back over to you. But I know there's some other great stuff going on in the state and the Commonwealth. And while we want to throttle Nashville and never hear that city again, its competition is good. And when GE jumped into DOS, that was good for the entire system because it competitiveness amongst one another raises all ships. And so if there's anything in here we can do, and I'm telling you, we could do another hour on the lessons we learned and the ways we made mistakes. So if there's anything we can share to help any other folks in the Commonwealth, I mean, that's kind of what this is about. So Louisville's different, of course, and that's okay. But if there's anything that we can do to help, we're not going to compete against other Kentuckians. And if we do, it's only for the good of all of Kentucky. So anyway.
Well, I've got messages going back and forth from a lot of members of my team about further meetings we want to set up to explore how we can set this up in other places. So you will definitely be hearing from us. And I really just want to say thank you to all three of you. We've heard a lot about your successes, and I just really wanted to thank you for taking the time today, especially our international guest from Canada today, for taking the time to join us and share what a great opportunity this is for the students at JCPS. So thank you, everyone. And next month, I don't know who our speaker is yet, but please join us the first Wednesday of each month for more good news and best practices. And I appreciate everybody's attendance and attention today, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Hey, Stephanie.
Yep.
Hey, could I just?
You can do whatever you want to do.
Tony and Joe and Michael, thank you so much. This was fantastic. And Tony, to your point, yes, there are lots of things going on across the state, a lot of good things. The one thing that I am so impressed with and have been for years is the collaboration and the working together of the various parties that can come together with one critical mission. And that, I think, is the biggest impediment that we have in this Commonwealth, is we can't get everybody on the same page. And I think that is the one significant above and beyond that I've seen from the folks up there, that when there is a mission critical activity, you're able to bring all the parties together. And I know it's not easy, but you're able to accomplish that, and without separate agendas disrupting it. So hats off to you guys.
Hey, real quick, Kim, I got to appreciate that, because tonight, Michael referenced the meeting. Tonight it won't be UPS and Dr. Ellison. Tonight it'll be Tony and Joe, and we'll be going at it. But we will come out of that meeting with a unified agreement. So the disagreement is okay. It's actually encouraged, but we do present a unified front. So yeah, I appreciate you recognizing that.
Absolutely. Hopefully you guys can have a beer afterwards.
It always resolves amicably, so we're good.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks,
All right, y'all. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all for hosting us. Thanks.